Hello and a warm Collisions YYC. Welcome to my guest this morning, the lovely, the talented Miss Colleen Pound. How are you, Colleen?
I am wonderful, Tyler. How are you this morning?
I am fabulous. This is our third, fourth. I don't know. We've had many conversations. What I'm excited about this one more than ever, because you've got a new venture, new to us being on the show, not new to you, even working at this for a year and a half. I've been fortunate to have a ringside seat, but it was time to get you on the show and tell the world about being the CEO and co-founder at Proxure. So let us in the tent. What's a Proxure? What do you do? What blows your hair back? What problem are you solving in the world? Give us the elevator.
Oh my goodness. Well, so many things. So Proxure, we are a data and analytics company. We provide business intelligence, market intelligence, and predictive pricing and analytics in the professional services procurement space. And our first vertical is law. So we really, we focus on the problem that folks have, that they get their legal bills from a corporate perspective. They don't understand them. They can't tell if they're getting good value. Everyone hates paying a legal bill. And there's a real lack of transparency. And so we believe that with better data and better process, you can drive better business outcomes for clients. And that first step is that transparency in that data.
I love it. You've been in this pitch elevator before. I really appreciate how succinct that was. I am curious though. You have an eclectic journey. You've done a lot of things in your professional career, all things we've chatted about on the show. So please go back, search Colleen Pound Collisions. You will find some great episodes where we have some really in-depth conversations. But what led you to being a startup founder? We'll talk about, your business and all that, but I'd love the journey just a little bit from yourself of like, you know what? Hell yes. At this point in my career, startup founder is something I want, and CEO is something I want on my resume. And this is the best way to accomplish it. Give the audience a little window into even that decision.
Yeah, well, I think a couple factors. I mean, one, this is my third startup, right? So my first was a professional services firm. My second was a clothing line. And so this is my third. So I have ridden the entrepreneurial roller coaster before.
Nice, of course.
And so in there, I've also had the experiences of working in industry and working at a large firm. And so really had like the breadth and depth of all those different types of experiences. So I love the entrepreneurial spirit of being able to be nimble and to do what we want, when we want, the way we want in order to solve a problem. Like that's something that's super appealing to me. Also, I've always been ahead in some way. And so whether it's, from high school, my first papers was around fiber optics, in the early 90s, or same-sex benefits, when I was in early university, to like my clothing line for plus size women 30 to 55. We are like 10 years too soon on the e-commerce direct to consumer. And so 2014, I was like, everyone needs to optimize their spend at a time when people were rolling in cash. And I was like, we need to look at decision sciences as a way of like advancing how we think about our business decisions. So data and analytics is one more way where I feel like, and I'm definitely not at the forefront, would never claim to be that. And I'm also a non-technical founder. So I'm not the person who knows all about the zeros and ones to the same extent that many people have been studying this for decades. But what I really do believe is that when we know better, we do better. And that's on us. And that's the opportunity. And through my career, I've always been really focused on helping clients. And when I met my business partner, Chris Wolfenberg, we started to talk about our mutual businesses and what we do and how we work with clients and what were some of the problems that they were running into. And we landed on a couple different versions of how we could help clients' lives better, clients' lives make them better. Mm-hmm. That seems out of sequence. But if I try and say it again, it's still going to be a little messy. But really, it's about solving client problems. And so our original idea arose out of an experience that Chris had with one of his clients, and really led us to explore a digital transformation workflow for RFPs. So the data piece was always going to be the back end of our roadmap. That was kind of it was the digital transformation first, and then the data and analytics on the back end. And and we started development on that in the summer of last year. And we did over 30 customer interviews for product market fit, and clients were interested in the digital transformation piece, in the revolution that we called it, but they were more interested and more excited and had more problems on the data side. And so that's one of the aspects of being an entrepreneur and going to market and really testing and doing that research. And it's a common phrase that's used in startup land around fall in love with your customer's problem, right? Don't fall in love with the problem that you want to solve for them. And I think it's both in an arena where customers don't always know what's available or what's out there and aren't always looking for more problems because they're just trying to run their day-to-day business. They're not always looking for problems, but so you need to kind of pull that out. What are the pain points and how we can make it easier? And I think that that opportunity to talk to clients about customer product market fit was a game changer for us in terms of being able to bring forward the data and analytics piece early on in the journey. So I think I answered a couple questions.
You did a couple that I haven't asked yet, and you used my "don't fall in love with the problem, fall in love with the customer," which I was going to say to you. So obviously we're on the right wavelength. Which I love that.
Always.
That balance between being problem aware, solution aware, and not even knowing what's out there, especially in this world of rapidly changing technology. Something I want to go back on out of the myriad of wonderful things you said, the non-technical founder. When is that a strength? When is it a weakness? Give us a couple stories just to balance off. Because I know a lot of people are like, I've got this great idea because I really understand the problem. I'm just not technical enough. I don't see myself that way. I almost self-select out sometimes of even trying to solve the problem because I'm like, not a technology person, not a technology human, not my thing. But yet subject matter expertise has, bruised knuckles from being in the problem, but not necessarily understanding the tech. Give us a little bit of your journey of like when it's been a strength and maybe when it's been a blind spot. I don't know. I'm reluctant to use the word weakness in context to Colleen Pound.
Well, I appreciate that. I'll start off with where I think everyone can relate to is the armchair CEO that reads that in-flight magazine on generative AI or large language learning models, and comes back to their team and says, "Hey, I just read this article. I think we should do it." I had a client at one point about 6 years ago who was like, hyped up on drones. And he's like, "We got to get some drones." I was like, "Well, what are you going to use them for?" "I don't know, but we're going to figure it out." Right? Like, just did not want to be left behind. And so everyone hates that scenario. It's annoying. You appreciate the enthusiasm and the intention, but it's just one more shiny object squirrel scenario. So I think that's a situation where non-technical, if you don't understand the technology in concept, what it can do or what business problems it can solve. So the use cases and the application, I think that can be an issue. I think it can also be an issue if you don't understand the potential and the limits of the technology. There's always an idea that technology can solve everything, and it's rarely a silver bullet. And I think there's also a gap that can occur when you look at how long it takes to do things. We think, technology solves everything and it solves everything tomorrow. No, that's not the case. It takes time. It takes iteration. It takes trying things and failing. If anyone has ever been in a situation where you're online with your help desk and something's not working and you just keep pushing the same button that you've always pushed but it's not doing what you want it to do. A lot of times the folks that are supporting you don't just go, "Oh yeah, it's this one thing and here you go." It's like, "Okay, try this, try that. That didn't work." So there's some
That's a good example.
exploration, right? And some experimentation that comes along with that. And so I would say being a non-technical founder, you require a lot of patience, something that you might know I'm not known for. So I think some of those things are definitely factors when you're thinking about being a non-technical founder. However, the balance of that is, and Chris and I joke about this all the time, is that if we can use the technology that we've built, then it's a success. Because we are the least patient, least technically savvy when it comes to, figuring things out. I want things to be simple. I want them to be easy. I want them to be intuitive. I'm very busy, so I want the results right now. And so those aspects, we are very much our target and our test customer. So I think that that's beneficial. And also, we bring the domain expertise of the problem that we're solving.
Mhm.
And what can be led astray in a technical product roadmap is falling in love with features and functions and functionality that you want to develop or overdevelop, that your customer hasn't asked for or is never going to use or is never going to use that way, because you fall in love with the actual technology and what it can do. And then it just becomes really interesting technology as opposed to helping you do something different or better.
And on your journey so far, and you can be as detailed as you want, is there an example where you got cross-threaded with your tech team where you're like, hey, I'm over here, I don't understand. They're saying, no, 100% we have to do this. But your intuition, your gut, your experience, your years of like, I don't know. Yet you're pushing back on someone who's like, no, I know. I 100% know. Yet as the CEO, as the leader, you're like, talk to us a little bit about how do you navigate that? Like when everything's like, when it's right on the edge of like, no, we're doing this. And you're like, I don't think we should, but yet I can't necessarily justify it with the technical. I can't bring and hit you with the textbook, but I know this isn't the right approach or path.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's lots of those examples. A couple that come to mind. I mean, one, I will say that communication between the tech team and yourselves is paramount, and often there's a translation. So when I say this,
even to be able to speak the same language.
yes. So when I say this, I mean this, and this is what this means, and this is what it looks like, and this is how it should work and how it should function. I would definitely say that there's some of that. I mean, also in terms of timelines, right? Software projects don't run like regular projects. And there's such a creative element to coding that it doesn't necessarily lend itself well to the linear type of project management that we would see in many other forms and functions. And what that means is that sometimes you estimate that a piece of code is going to take 4 hours and it takes 16. And so when you're driving towards a deadline, that can cause some friction. And then when you get into it, there can be a lack of understanding about, well, why you said it would take 4 hours. It's like, yeah, well, it didn't take 4 hours. Well, why not? Like, what could we have done differently for next time? Well, sometimes the code just doesn't work, or, we needed to try to figure it out a different way. And developers need that sometimes the time and the space to be creative, to think through the problem in kind of 3D, and then it'll come to them at like 3 a.m, and then they're up, all day coding something.
With a 2 liter of some type of soft drink sitting beside them. That was my brother-in-law's. I'm like, what did you do last night? He goes, I coded all night. I just got on a trend and I got something figured out. And I just couldn't stop till it was done.
Right. And
not to over stereotype, but speaking about a very specific individual.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. Talk to me about, you made the comment about to communicate and, almost, my words, but no such thing as over communicate. Okay. What do you mean? And what do I mean? And that's so easily overlooked because it feels like it takes too long. But yet the risk is that by not doing it, you're just burying landmines later. Talk to me about the discipline or your recommendations or even advice you'd give yourself 6 months ago on how to make sure to kind of force the issue of communication and dispelling the myth that it actually did happen. Because isn't that the biggest myth of communication, is that it happened?
Right. Yes. Well, so many things to say on that. What advice would I give myself 6 months or a year ago? I think it can be easy as a non-technical founder to provide the direction and the edict and then walk away from the tech team, and just show up at the daily stand-ups, and not really dig in. Like I think that I've definitely done that at some point. And then there's the business logic that needs to be coded into the tech. And I think that's what's really critical, is to always be there to have the conversations around how does the business logic work? Not just giving your tech team a set of specs, but really involving them in helping them understand who is the customer, what's the persona, how do they make decisions, what's a day in their life look like? just to give them more color and more context so that they can start to think about coding for this persona or this customer, as opposed to just building a set of specs. I think that for me would be the single greatest thing that we learned, and the opportunity that we could have taken advantage of in advance is to, we jokingly call our CFO Wendy, and because his name is Dave, and so like getting our tech team to say, well, what would Wendy think about this? How would Wendy use that? What would be the decision criteria for Wendy? What would Wendy care about?
You
in
putting
this
that extra
scenario,
chair at the
scenario?
boardroom table, which is the customer chair, the user chair.
Exactly. So
yeah.
I think that's the greatest opportunity around communication, because if you speak in hypotheticals, there's always opportunity to get lost. When you speak about a real person or a real persona with real problems and real decisions to make, it provides that context that your dev team needs in order to help understand how that technology needs to function.
I love that. Did you use specific for like customer journey mapping, empathy mapping? Did you use any specific tools like off the shelf, something that somebody can Google while they're sitting here? My biggest hope for this podcast is it just makes people go, I'm curious. How would I use that in my company? Did you have specific tactics that you used in creating that persona? And more importantly, understanding that persona, not just creating it?
Well, we early on in our we had already built out our first prototype before we met with our before we even started with our dev team.
Okay.
So we had a really good prototype to work with, and we had done our own customer journey and customer mapping through building that prototype. And so that was really the genesis and the foundation for them to build our tech. I would say what we were building the plane while we were flying it in that first part of it. And so all the customer journey aspects were built into them following the prototype. When we did our customer interviews and decided to bring the data and analytics forward, the customer journey became much more important in terms of who is our real buyer, who's our end user, are they the same, are they different, at what level, how often are they going to use this, and to really build out those personas. And so what we did was we had, like I said, over 35 customer interviews, and we got so much great data that we mapped a lot of that to our personas, and then tested that back with our target market from an end use customer perspective. So that's what we're doing now in our personas. We're just getting ready to launch beta, do our beta test in Q2, which we're already in Q2. So that gives you an idea about how close we are to that. But we're still iterating. We're still taking feedback and making adjustments and learning more about our persona clients as they were and what they like and what they don't like.
And I would imagine boldly that that's going to continue for quite some time.
100%.
Talk to me a little bit about your own journey. And I appreciate this isn't my first kick at the can. This isn't my first foray into entrepreneurship, but this is your first foray into this project at this stage of your life or of your professional career. Just to touch on the personal side of it is so easy. We'll talk about the roadmap and we'll talk about our milestones. And what about the human element for you? What's been tough on this journey? What's been, also thinking about other founders listening to this? I like to normalize things by talking about them. So what are some of the things that, you feel comfortable sharing that you've gone through as a founder at this stage of your career journey and this stage of your life?
Yeah, I've had a ton of people ask me, why am I doing this? And why am I doing this at this particular stage of my career?
I might have been one of those people.
And I'm excited to do something that hasn't really been done before. And so to be a female founder in tech, female non-technical founder in tech, in AI and data analytics, we are very much on the forefront and in the front foot. Our hope and our goal is really to level the playing field in professional services. So the right people do the right work at the right price. So what that means for me is creating incredible value for clients. It should also open up the opportunity for folks who previously haven't been given the opportunity to deliver these services, to deliver them. And what do I mean when I say that? I mean, women and people of color, Indigenous folks, they've not historically been part of the old boys club in professional services. And a lot of how people make decisions about how to allocate their funding for professional services is through previous relationships, and that has historically been white men.
Yep.
And there's a ton of talent that's not being used out there. Well, why isn't it being used? Because maybe people don't know about it. How do people know about it? Through data. And so data is really that first step in leveling the playing field. And that's something that I'm super passionate about.
I love it. What's been your biggest sacrifice personally on this journey?
Well, not getting paid gets tiring after a while.
Thanks for going right at it.
Yeah, I can't remember the last time I went this long without a paycheck. I think it was probably grade 9. So definitely going without a paycheck is not something I recommend. It's not for the faint of heart. And it definitely gets old after a while. I think, going from working with large organizations and working in a large organization to working with a small team, the cadence is different. And so I knew that would be something that would be challenging for me, which is why I have made an active effort to continue to upkeep my network and build my network in different ways so that I'm not just relying on the same 10 voices over and over again to expand my thinking. I think that those are probably the top 2. There's a whole litany of them. The emotional roller coaster, right? Like the highs are high and the lows are low. I think having a great business partner is a huge key, especially when you're leading. And we definitely have had. We had a talk, I think, last fall where I said, "Hey, like I'm actually not having as much fun as I thought I would. And so what do we need to do differently in order to make that change?" And for sure, you're not going to have like 100% fun all the time. You know, my philosophy, I'm like, it has to be 80-20 or 90-10, in order for us to keep pushing through. And so it really helps to have someone as your cheerleader, someone that you can bounce ideas off. I mean, it's you and Chad.
I love it. And very rare are we ever both below the 70, or I know to me, it's the rule of stretch. As long as I'm getting 70% wins, that 30% of uncomfortable, that's part of the game. And I think psychologically it works. If you're both below 70 at the same time, those are tough days, but usually not. That's the best about having a good partnership is you offset each other. And it is huge. People always look, oh, how's the partnership? Like almost expecting there to be drama. I'm like, I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the partnership. So I hear you loud and clear on that. And it has, again, like anything, the right partner, not just a partner.
Yes. Well, that can be said for so many things.
Everything, I think. Everything.
Yeah. And, but yeah, I think that's, and seeing that helps to see the light at the end of the tunnel, and you pump each other's tires. It's like, we actually, because I'm in it more, into the details sometimes, I'm not lifting my head up. I'm so focused on the puck on the ice. I'm not lifting my head up to see the goal and to see the net. And Chris will say, we actually made really good progress. And I was like, but we didn't get this or this or this done. And he's like, no, but we have momentum. We're making good progress. We've done all these things. And
different roles. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I really appreciate that. I think that like, that is the reason that we're here, beyond creating the values, because we have like a strong foundation and a really good partnership.
Did you have clear miles? Did you have clear, because I know you're a very organized, very structured individual, around where the boundaries are and where the guardrails are? Did you have very specific when you went down this road, like, okay, at 6 months, I'm going to check in? Or was it more of an organic approach to go, okay, no, I'm not having fun, but I'm not having so little fun that I'm going to get off the bus. I'm still staying on the bus. Did you have those moments over the last kind of year and a half where there was like, well, if there's a bus stop around the corner, I might just get off?
Yeah, well, so when we started, we said, we're going to give it like 12 to 18 months, and it's either going to work or it's not. And then with the pivot that we made at Christmas, it kind of partially restarts the clock, right? Because I think
new gameplay. There's new gameplay on the field.
Absolutely, the reforecast. However, I would say, in the fall when I was saying, oh, we're not having as much fun, or I'm not having as much fun, is I think part of that was because we were struggling around we had this dissonance between what we thought we were going to do and then how it was coming together. And so making that pivot actually helped solve some of those problems.
Oh, nice. Okay, awesome. So again, it's a fluid environment.
For sure. And I would say, like, if we're ever at a point where we're not making momentum, that's a check-in for me. Obviously, we do have project milestones, and like we're going to be doing our seed round in the fall. So, for example, all the contacts we're doing for raise between now and like the end of May are just setting us up to do our raise for the seed in the fall. And so we've got some very, very structured milestones, of course, on the delivery side. And as long as we're making a momentum and forward movement towards those at a reasonable pace, then that's energizing and exciting. And I would say the other thing, and Wilson and I have talked about this, so thanks for making that connection for us.
Props out to Wilson Acton for any of the audience who didn't just know who we meant when we said Wilson. I will call him out as an influential and very positive contributor to the Calgary and ecosystem and beyond.
Yes, he's wonderful and hilarious, and
check.
And handsome. I'll throw that in there too.
Whoa! Okay, let's not get carried away, Wilson.
Listen, we take it out for a spin. But the more we talk to more sophisticated investors and folks who understand the space, the more excited they are about it. And that is reassuring and energizing as well. And so that helps us with the momentum. If everyone was saying this is a stupid idea, or I don't know, or just, the pat on the head and, it doesn't fit my investment thesis, but, good luck. That's very, very different than, hey, we're super interested. Keep us on your newsletter, keep us on your mailing list. We want to know, we want to be involved in the next round.
How much time, and I know you're such a good networker, how critical is that to get your head, the head down, ass up, just working on the project versus the head down, ass up, building your network simultaneously? Talk to me a little bit about how important it is. You just alluded to it. Build that database, build those relationships before you need the ask.
Yes, absolutely. I say I have 3 jobs: raise the money, build the product, sell the product. And so raise the money
in that order.
Well, raise the money and build the product for us are simultaneous. Yep. And because I alluded to the building the plane while flying it, and Chris and I have bootstrapped, effectively this entire time. We did a small pre-seed friends and family round, but we're pretty selective about the money that we took in, and so. I just like any kind of good networking, just like building a relationship on LinkedIn, right? You want to connect with the person, create value, or build that relationship before you have an ask. And if and when you do have an ask, it's very specific, respectful, targeted, and you've done your homework. So building the network super important. I probably spend 25 to 50% of my time doing that, whether it's one-on-one or large events. And I hate large events. So
I do. You and me both, because we usually end up just hanging out in the back, chatting and joking.
Yes, exactly. And so I think one of the aspects that differentiates Proxure from perhaps other startups is that we are not younger kids working out of our parents' basement, as Chris would say, that we are seasoned professionals who have had long careers and built networks and have built credible relationships. So we've been able to draw on that. I actually don't know how a lot of founders start out. When we started out, I just made a list of 150 people that I thought we should start to build relationships with or deepen or, start to pitch to and go from there. And I don't know how people who don't have those networks start out. I'm just honestly in awe and they have my admiration and respect because
it's harder and it takes longer, really, both.
Right. Well, and also this is a question you didn't ask, but I'm going to answer it because I think it's important to talk about. Is pitching to sell work is different than pitching for money, and that was a really painful. Okay. Learning that I had last summer when we were doing a run through, and I was terrible Like I was horrific, and I, have pitched for work my whole life, and we did a run through, and with Chris Buckman, who's entrepreneur in residence at Denton's, and then my business partner Chris, and they turned to me after my run through, and they said, "Well, when will the real Colleen show up?" Right? Like there was no fun, there was no giggles, there was no interaction, and it was something that I really had to dig deep on. I spent probably 4 to 6 weeks just it was a Colleen problem that I needed to solve.
Wow, that's powerful. And just thinking that you had it, and then all of a sudden like, whoa, I don't have it. And those are those moments as an experienced professional that can kind of catch you off guard and be very humbling, and also where the most learning typically comes from.
Definitely. Well, and also the appreciation for others.
Mm-hmm. Of the skill. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
I love it. Colleen, thanks so much for your candor and your honesty. As always, we have great chats because we both show up, especially you, and being honest about this journey, and being an individual on the outside that has many times been like, what are you doing? Is this the right journey? So I love that we can turn this into a podcast to give it an opportunity for other people to go, thanks for being honest. Thanks for being vulnerable. Thanks for telling it like it is, because that's the only time you're going to learn. There's too many rose-colored stories out there. Like, this is when I was awesome and I did awesome and everything is awesome. That's not how it goes in real life. And I appreciate your honesty around that. For anyone listening who's on the journey, who's maybe you're in a bit cheesy question, I'm going to ask it anyways. A couple pieces of advice that you would, we have so many people in Calgary now that this startup tech ecosystem, tech or not, is an opportunity now. Entrepreneurship isn't a dirty word anymore, like when you and I were in school. That's what you did when you couldn't get a real job. And that's not the case anymore. Anything you would say to that cohort that's listening for some inspiration and is maybe on the verge of putting their toe in the water?
I think we have, like we've always had in Calgary, a really strong supportive community, and the tech community here is no different. Go to the events. As much as I said earlier, like I hate going to events, the only way to get to know folks in the ecosystem is to go to some of the events and make some connections, and connecting with other founders that you can talk about your ups and your downs is great. Like Temi and I, we meet once a month to talk about,
Rodator. He's an awesome rock star. Had him on an episode a few months ago. Introduced to him through you. I love what they do. I love their service, and he's just an awesome human being as well.
Exactly. And so, having relationships with other founders, sometimes being able to share ideas or resources, like just brainstorming
or war stories. War stories. Remember
yes,
that time you lost your foot? Oh my God, that was hilarious. Yeah, no, exactly.
Don't worry, we made 6 more, so it was fine.
So we got you. Don't worry. Yeah. This happens to everybody, and no matter what happens to you, you're probably not. You only feel alone if you're not having those conversations, because like I guarantee we're all swimming in the same pool from time to time, different versions of the pond, right? Yeah.
Well, and at different points, and so and also, like don't get trapped in your house or your basement or your office. Like get outside. Go for a walk. Like some of the best things that I've done are when I realize that I've been in my office or in my home office for too long, and I just need to get outside. So, it seems obvious, but perhaps a worthy reminder. And we have a great group of advisors, and of which you're one, and I really appreciate that. And I do really appreciate all of our advisors. We have had a ton of support. And I think that that's the other thing related back to what's the advice. People around you want you to succeed. And the offers of help that we have had from every corner, saying, hey, I don't know exactly what you need, but I'm happy to help, or tell me what I can do or when I can do it. And I think that as an entrepreneur, you need to swallow any pride that you have and be humble and be willing to ask for help. And people are willing to give it to you. And I think that that's a beautiful thing.
Boom. Mic drop moment. What's the best way for someone to get a hold of you? Is it LinkedIn? Is it smoke signals? Is it carrier pigeons? What's your preferred?
As you know, interpretive dance is my preferred signal, but
I do.
We're happy to, we just launched a new website, Proxure.io, Proxure, for those who aren't familiar, email Colleen at Proxure.io, and I love LinkedIn, and I'm happy to have a coffee with anyone at any time.
Amazing. And please, everyone, if you're listening, take her up on it. She means it, and it will be well worth your time and your $3 coffee or whatever it is that it costs these days to buy a coffee. My coffee comes from my kitchen. It's a whole different world I live in now.
Well, and as you know, I don't drink coffee, so.
Oh, well, even better. That's right. I did know that as well. Yeah. Colleen, thanks for coming on. Thanks for your honesty. High fives to like staying with it, doing the thing that you do, and being willing to share it with people around you. I love it. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for the time and the great questions. You have an inside track into the vulnerable aspects, so thanks for bringing those to light.
It's if we can't be real, then why are we even bothering?
Exactly.